The synagogue rampage is putting a spotlight on the uptick of anti-Semitic incidents in America. According to the Anti-Defamation League, there were nearly 2,000 incidents motivated by anti-Jewish bias in 2017. That marks a 57% increase compared to 2016. That year, the organization recorded fewer than 1,300 anti-Semitic incidents, which include harassment, vandalism, and assault. The number of cases recorded in 2017 were the highest since 1994, according to the ADL. The organization's research found U.S. schools and colleges were particularly affected. Between 2016 and 2017, there was an 89% increase in the number of anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses. Researchers also say they are seeing an increase in anti-Semitic posts from far-right users on Instagram and Twitter. And last year, the Department of Homeland Security changed a $10 million grant program, narrowing its focus around efforts to combat Islamic extremism, shifting money away from groups that combat U.S.-based extremism. Joining us now, the author of The Chosen Wars, How Judaism Became an American Religion, Steve Weissman, and Deputy Washington Editor for the New York Times, Jonathan Weissman, no relation to Steve. He's the author of the book, Semitism, Being Jewish in America in the Age of Trump. And Jonathan, first of all, what do you make of the data that I just laid out there? Is there anything you can attribute it to? What parallels would you draw to the climate of today?
Well, one thing I want to note is that jump, that big jump in 2017 actually came after another jump in 2016, and the jump in 2016 was directly attributable to the heated campaign for the presidency. I don't think really it's subject to debate. The fact is that there's been a rise in hate crimes, bigotry, not just against Jews, but against immigrants, Muslims, Latinos, and African Americans since Donald Trump's rise to the presidency.
Steve, do you agree?
I do. But anti-Semitism has been a virulent strain since Jews first arrived on American shores in the middle of the 17th century. But there has been this uptick, and it's focused on a number of things, but I wanted to point something out about the significance of Pittsburgh, if I may.
Please.
Pittsburgh is one of the hearts of the Jewish community in America. And it's very important historically because in the 1880s, there was a major conclave of rabbis in Pittsburgh who proclaimed more explicitly than ever before that American Jews stood for social justice, not just for Jews, but for all people, all people. And Jews today believe in social justice, according to every poll, not just for Jews, but for all people. And I think this is one of the reasons that Jews are singled out as for opprobrium as globalists, internationalists. Their loyalty, they're grieving today not just for themselves, but for the kind of America that we've become.
John Heilemann, I guess in another day or another time with another president, wouldn't the next stop for the president of the United States be Pittsburgh?
Well, I think it was an interesting thing you saw over the weekend, Mika. The mayor of Pittsburgh was on Meet the Press, I believe, and he was asked by Chuck whether the president should come to Pittsburgh, and the mayor, I thought, rather pointedly said that it was up to the families whether they wanted to have Donald Trump at Pittsburgh. He did not say, yes, we would welcome the president's presence here. Maybe he knows something about how those families would feel about Donald Trump coming to Pittsburgh. I want to ask Jonathan Weissman, though. Jonathan, you have a lot of some personal experience, I know, that motivated you to write this book related to not just being Jewish in Donald Trump's America, but being the object of anti-Semitism in Donald Trump's America. And one of the things you focus on in the book and have written about and talked about is the role of social media in creating something new. It's true, of course, anti-Semitism is as old as the Jewish religion, and it's been in America since the founding of the Republic. But we are at a different age, not just because Donald Trump is president, but because there's this new media ecosystem that has enabled a different kind, a different spread of anti-Semitism, a different kind of manifestation of it. I'd like you to talk about that a little bit and your own experiences in that area.
Well, you know, the alt-right, the alternative right, actually emerged in the later George W. Bush years. It was the alternative to his adventurism abroad, to his internationalism, but we really didn't hear about the alt-right until the 2016 campaign. We weren't really paying attention, but what really was happening was that the bigots on the right, the people like the neo-Nazis at the Daily Stormer or the Klan at Stormfront, they had been talking to each other in their own little worlds, their own publications, their own websites. Then they learned how to weaponize the internet. They actually learned how to weaponize the internet through the guys living in their basement doing what was called Gamergate, which was attacking women video game designers. That taught them that they could use the internet to publicize their attacks, to publicize their victims, and then in 2016, they decided to come out against Jewish journalists like myself, but certainly not myself alone. And we were pummeled online, not only just through social media, but also in our inboxes on our phones, our inboxes on our emails. They learned how to go after and target Jews, and we are learning about that now. You know, the 2017 was not the beginning of this. It was really building up in the last 8 years and really burst out into the open in 2016 when the far right learned how to organize and weaponize the internet.
Peggy.
Hey, good morning, guys. What you say, what was just said, is kind of alarming because I agree with it, but the internet is not going to go away. And so these little hollows full of people who are enraged, aggrieved, and feeding on each other is not going to go away. So I'm wondering where we go from here knowing that. But also, Steve Weissman, I've seen your book. I think it's marvelous. And I know you are very interesting on the subject of what America has been the past 200 years to American Jews, how they have viewed America, which I think is some poignant, touching, rather painful part of the Pittsburgh story.
Well, thank you, Peggy. It's a pleasure to see you this morning. That's right. I think Jews actually changed their orientation in America because they really felt that upon arriving in America, they had arrived at the promised land. They had arrived at Zion. And what you see evolved in the 19th century and into today is that Jews stopped praying and believing that a Messiah would one day deliver them back to Palestine, to Zion, because they felt that they had arrived in the promised land. This was the greatest fulfillment of Jewish aspirations. And of course, there was anti-Semitism from the colonial era through the Civil War, through the late 19th century, through the Great Depression, as John Meacham mentioned earlier. But Jews have clung to their identity as part of the fabric of American society and integrated into American society. That's a source of great pride. And it's this ugly recrudescence of hatred that is shattering not just it's a different kind of hatred for Jews. It's reading them out of the fabric of American society, which is scary and horrific.
I mean, remember that the attack in Pittsburgh was the largest slaughter of American Jews in American history. So we can go back to Father Coughlin and even further back, but the moment right now, this is the moment where we can say we have seen the largest slaughter of American Jews. And for American Jews who fled pogroms, who fled the gas chambers of Auschwitz, this is a startling moment, and one that a lot of us have feared.
Jonathan Weissman, Steve Weissman, thank you both for being on the show this morning. Let's pull back and look at the politics of this. I'm a suburban mom, a privileged one for sure. But I think I have a pretty good feel for why a lot of these competitive suburban House districts seem to be trending toward the Democrats. Most days it seems like the entire Trump presidency has been purposefully geared toward alienating suburban women, some of whom chose Trump over Hillary Clinton, but are now looking to put a check on this out-of-control presidency. His policies, his scandals, his rhetoric, all things that are deeply disturbing to many Americans. But if you're a woman and a mom and just a regular voter, how can you look at Donald Trump's reaction to those bombs sent to some of his most prominent critics and his graceless behavior in the wake of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and not be, to put it bluntly, absolutely disgusted? This week, Trump will continue to campaign hard for his Republican candidates, not shying away from making this election a referendum all about him. There are a lot of segments of the electorate that will determine how things turn out next week, but I say, I beg, I plea to all mothers, not just those who live in suburbs, but everywhere. Think about what message voting for Republicans will send to Donald Trump. Think about your children. I think it's pretty simple. I think we can't afford, as a country, to reward this kind of bad behavior in our president, and it's up to us. Coming up, quote, if Trump is not deliberately flirting with anti-Semitism and anti-Semites, he is regrettably oblivious to their presence. Those words are from the Washington Post's Ruth Marcus in her new column. And Ruth joins us ahead, because never mind the fact that the nation is reeling from back-to-back hate attacks, the president has an election to win.
I think that we're running a great campaign. People love what we're doing. They love what we're saying. The Republicans had tremendous momentum, and then, of course, this happened where all that you people talked about was that, and rightfully so. It was a big thing, rightfully so. But now we have to start the momentum again.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.